Do not put your intern in charge of your social media. It's the dumbest thing you could do. Yeah. Would you put the intern in front of a TV camera? Right. No.
The Golding Group Strategic Growth Podcast, formerly known as the Neo Marketing Podcast, offers real-world advice, expert analysis, and smart success strategies for entrepreneurs, investors, decision makers, and business leaders.
Welcome to the new Strategic Growth
Podcast. New name, same great host.
Gonna have to get that ingrained.
That's right.
But
we'll say it
good.
enough. You'll come up with it.
We'll say it enough.
That's
It'll
right.
be good. So a couple of podcasts ago, we talked about disinformation.
Yes. Very popular episode. We had a lot of feedback about
Awesome. That's good, because people need to be equipped in this world to identify and defeat disinformation, malinformation, misinformation.
Yes, it's everywhere.
I mean, we've seen over the course of the Ukraine war, we've seen Putin's lies. Mm-hmm. I mean, time and time again, right? We're not hitting hospitals. We're not hitting civilian places.
Well, the very first lie, they claimed they were doing this whole thing because of the amount of Nazis in Ukraine.
Right, exactly.
Come on, KGB guy.
And the Ukrainian people would just embrace them.
We're your friends.
Russia.
We're your friends.
Right,
we're doing this for your own good.
But disinformation is also a problem in business.
Absolutely it is.
Sometimes it's a reporter who doesn't get the story right or hasn't educated him or herself well enough to get the perspective.
Sometimes they just stop at the obvious answer instead of really being a journalist and digging.
They get lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're on deadline.
Too fast.
Whatever. Too fast.
The early information is typically wrong, right?
Right.
Because
that's
they're
exactly
working on
right.
speed and not accuracy.
Absolutely. That's in a crisis. That's absolutely correct. Sometimes it's just bad actors, your competitors, who want to take you down.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to extend this discussion about disinformation into the business world.
Okay.
And what an organization can do. And I'm using as kind of the foundation, the jumping off point, a Forbes article in 2020, 16 business strategies for dealing with fake news. And I'm going to take my own take on this because I don't completely agree with all of them.
Sure.
But let's see what happens. Their first point was have a response plan, have a protocol.
That's right. We've talked so many times. You guys know what we're talking about. Protocols over plans. Plans sit on the shelf and collect dust. Protocols empower people to make smart decisions.
Absolutely. They define the process.
Right.
And
but they don't exist. And let's see, I'm going to phrase it all wrong. If they don't exist, you can't have them before you need them.
Right, exactly. You can't build them in the moment.
No,
so you need to have it.
They can't be reactionary. They have to be based on best practices, common sense, etc. Not, oh my gosh, squash this rumor that's out there, but what's the best thing to do appropriately?
What are you going to do? Right. And the most important point about this particular point is that requires buy-in.
Yes.
From the top down, all the way through the staff,
all the way
into the employees.
Yes.
And that's important because, as we've talked about before, especially this idea that the initial part of a crisis information looks a lot like rumor.
Sure.
It doesn't take long in today's environment for that to just take off.
So speed is essential, but you can't cripple yourself by trying to move too fast.
Yes, that's exactly right. Take your time. We've talked about that. Breathe, especially when we were talking about apologies. See if you have something that you need to apologize for. But you have to have the protocol, the process outlined before you can go anyplace else. This seems pretty simple, but monitor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If you don't hear it coming, you can't respond to it.
Right. Exactly so. And we've talked many times about social media has such a capacity to help you listen.
Yes. Social listening. Yes.
People don't do it.
They
don't do it correctly.
And they often just do it trying to find positives, which is fantastic. It's smart to do. But you also have to pay attention to the potential negatives that are coming at you as well. And then understand or engage, have your protocols in place to what you respond to, what you don't.
Absolutely.
Because how quick can you, 5 seconds on social media can destroy 10 years of a brand reputation.
10 years of a brand reputation. And that's the second part of this particular point is that not just monitoring, And this is a philosophy that I had from my very early days in the Navy, and that is never let an inaccuracy go unanswered or uncommented upon, right? You can't let bad information linger out there.
You know, though, I'm going to push back a little bit, though, because you have to be careful that you don't give life to a false story.
Absolutely.
And so I think the real difference is the Twitter egg, right? The avatar of the person who's not put their picture up there with, Mr. Smith 4961 4944 with 3 followers.
Right.
Says, your business is going bankrupt tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's much more beneficial to say, we're going to move on from that. Now, if a reputable source with a large following on social media makes the same claim, then yes, you need to address that false information if it is indeed false.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're not responding in kind. You're responding with facts.
Truth always wins.
The truth.
The truth sets you free.
And to take your lead into another point, that is, they call it the Streisand Effect.
Okay.
And I love that.
Yes.
I really do. I was never a huge fan of Barbara Streisand, but she operates pretty well in this space. The biggest way to target fake news is to keep in mind the Streisand Effect. Just because people are touting disinformation about you doesn't always mean you need to engage.
It's true.
That's what you were saying.
That's exactly. Sometimes you give life and credence to that false information by responding to it.
Absolutely.
Especially when the information is outrageously unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
But
there are going to be people out there who do believe it. So.
Yes.
But
it's
again,
fine.
Sometimes you don't have to.
It's also fine,
something.
Speaking of Streisand or maybe someone who's famous or someone who needs popularity in their career, you don't need to make every person in the world love you. You need to meet the people who want to, in her case, listen to her music or watch the movie she's acting in.
Right.
It would say, we are fans of Barbara Streisand. The people who say, I don't like her music, or I don't like her movies, or I don't like her as a person, whatever they say, disparaging, doesn't matter.
Non-stakeholders.
Because they weren't supporting. They weren't buying her albums. They weren't going to her movies.
They were not her constituency.
Let them be ugly about it. Who cares?
And I'll argue with the old Hollywood bromide that any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah.
Nah, doesn't cut it. I mean, bad publicity is bad publicity, and it can wreck your reputation, as you said, in a few seconds, years of effort.
But your response, whether something's true or not, if it's salacious or not, believable or not, whatever it is, your response, because this is, and I believe this in interpersonal communications as well as mass communications, your response is more important and will reflect more on you as a person or as a brand than the initial fake news.
Right, absolutely.
So if you reply and respond in the way that people would hope and expect, and they would say, I would say the same thing, then you have a chance to actually build upon that negative information that's out in the world. Yeah. If you reply in an ugly way, if you say something that makes you look, if you try to play a role that you don't deserve, then you make things worse for yourself.
Absolutely.
But there is an opportunity there to address properly.
Absolutely.
Which is also why you have to be prepared, have your protocols, and be very conscientious of how you do it.
Well, and thanks for the lead-in, because authentic messaging is part of that, and being transparent is part of that.
We said truth is always right, and truth will set you free. Authenticity is always appreciated.
Yep.
You can't fake the funk. You shouldn't.
Nope.
Can't fake it till you make it. And being authentic, even when it's negative, even when you have to say, yes, we made a mistake or something didn't go the way it was intended, that authenticity goes back to the like you just said, the idea that your response is more important than the mistake you made.
Absolutely. And it's words.
If that's the case.
Words and deeds. So consistent, authentic actions and communications.
Yes.
Okay, they go hand in hand. And as for transparency, I love this turn of phrase. Content creation that comes from a place of experience versus opinion has been a safe way to avoid the pitfalls of fake news.
Yes.
So if you've got opinion, right?
Opinions.
Transparent.
You know what they say about
experience.
people. You know what they say about opinion.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Everyone's got one.
Everyone's got one. They all stink.
No one wants to see yours.
That's right. Maintaining the right level of objectivity in your response is that key piece of transparency, right? The fifth point is in responding is to be data-driven but empathetic.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
You got to strike that ideal balance between the data and between and telling your true story with heart.
Numbers and facts sometimes can be kind of hard to digest, especially if it's very technical or things of that nature. And at the end of the day, people are going to believe you or not based on emotions. So you have to consider the human and have empathy like humans do while presenting facts, especially if those facts are complicated.
Proof points, facts, evidence that support your case absolutely matter.
Be people speaking to other people. Don't be a corporate entity. Don't be hiding behind the brand with this cold, structured response. Be authentic and be human, which is empathy.
Data is going to fall flat if it doesn't have that heart element.
People will ignore really strong data if they don't believe you.
Yeah.
Or they don't trust you.
Right. Heart and head go hand in hand. Absolutely. I'll credit that to the article. Control the narrative, and we've talked about this, right? Don't let the narrative control you. Put out a statement that addresses the root of the original erroneous statement. Focus on the root cause.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Don't get down in the weeds of arguing with every rando on Twitter.
Absolutely. But in the process of doing that, you have to look at all angles of the story because, you could cover this segment.
Right.
And this segment's going to bite you in the tail.
And by providing information at the root level, it also allows other people, not associated with you, fans, customers, just people who think what's happening to you is wrong, to go and white knight for you, to go fight on your behalf. Once they understand the basis of the problem or the basis of the fact that the fake news is indeed fake.
You've been reading my news because that goes right into the next point, which is to leverage fresh customer testimonials.
Yes.
And that's calling on your advocates, calling on the folks that support you.
Let them stand up and defend you. And I've seen cases where by time the official response from the brand gets crafted, their fans, their audience, has already pushed back and pushed off the ledge the fake news.
Yeah,
there's no better scenario than the public sticking up for you before you even get a chance to.
And you don't have to do a thing because they're doing it for you.
Because who's going to believe that? Everyone, because it's authentic and it's grassroots.
Well, and we go back to the results of the Edelman Trust Barometer for many, many years, which showed that the most reliable, trustworthy person is someone just like you and me.
Every time.
Every time.
All day, every day.
Yeah. This one's a little more tricky, but I think it's really important. You need to be a little bit of a detective. You need to find the source of the disinformation or misinformation.
If you can. It's not always possible, but you do need to put those efforts in to attempt to try that.
Right. Well, but again, it goes back to why disinformation comes about. It could be a journalist who wrote an article that was not entirely accurate. It could be activists. It could be lawyers.
It could be opposition.
Plaintiffs. Could be opposition. Right. That are putting out.
Could just be troublemakers. But just stirring up because they think it's funny.
But in understanding who's shopping this stuff, you can also understand better what their agenda is, so that you can steer clear of that and or mount a counteroffensive.
Yes.
Okay? Again, this should be obvious, but use all the tools in your toolbox. Yeah. Respond across all of the channels, as many channels as possible. So if it shows up on Twitter, you got to use Twitter, of course.
Step one.
But you got to use Facebook, LinkedIn,
deliver
TikTok.
Through.
I mean, whatever you've got.
Push it out of the way.
Absolutely. Multiple times sometimes.
That's why you've established those channels and the ability to do that.
Yep.
This is the time to do it.
Yep. It will help control the spread because maybe nobody's seen that in the other space, but now you've inoculated them.
Right. Give them the ammunition to go and fight on your behalf.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to ask you about this one because I'm at 6s and 7s, right? This piece of advice says to be creative and humorous.
Ooh.
Use humor, have a little fun with it, entertain your customers. I think there's an appropriate time for humor.
Appropriate. The word I had was authentic.
Authentic.
If it's authentic for your brand,
if
it's on brand message and in brand voice and brand tone,
right,
then embrace that. And I understand, I guess, the core idea of kind of giving some levity to the situation.
Right.
And this is very much it depends. Depends on the situation, depends on the fake news, depends on your brand, depends on who's attacking you, all of those things. But if it's authentic, or if the fake news is really getting into that ridiculous, then why not make fun of it and almost embrace it? Like, can you believe this?
Yeah.
Because then the mockery of it defends your point.
Right.
So I think there is some time and place, but not as
Not all the
advice
time.
across the board.
Right.
Every other point I've agreed with, like, yeah, that's going to always work for you. This one, I'm with you. I don't think so, unless the situation specifically calls for it.
And
but if it does,
it's part
lean
of your
in.
authenticity,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Right, and then lean in. We talked about the Streisand Effect. This was an interesting piece of advice that I hadn't really thought about, but I should have. Look to Reddit.
Yeah, there's a ton of conversations happening over there,
right?
And they're very aggressive.
When it hits the mainstream media,
it probably is on Reddit.
It came from someplace else.
Yes.
So the point, look to Reddit, means look at all of the other possible sources for this inaccuracy
and
or
probably
falsity.
the place it will spread the fastest is Reddit,
right?
And a couple other kind of key players in that space. So yeah, I think every business, every marketing department, every social media team needs to understand that they need to keep an eye on those things.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that will also help you kind of get ahead of the news cycle. Right. Maybe you see it before the journalists
It goes back
do.
to the source. Who's the source and where's it coming from?
Who's the source and where are they coming from? If it really gets bad, offer a background briefing. In other words, for instance, if a journalist has gotten a story right, they don't want to be professionally embarrassed. So get in touch with them and offer them a briefing with a subject matter expert, just so they can see maybe the errors of their ways. I wouldn't expect to get a retraction or a correction in the story, but education is key so that reporter doesn't have that viewpoint later.
Or they can get on it now before waiting for tomorrow's edition to be published.
Right, absolutely.
They can get right on social media and express what's being missed out or what's being reported wrong.
Yep. Maintain an up-to-date hub of information. I see this as the website. I see this as the newsroom. I see this as a place where you put all of your product announcements, all of your
current social media. Even if social media isn't a selling tool for you or highly up in impact on your marketing scheme, you still should have your presence. You should own your names and your handles there, and then be using it on enough of a regular basis where if you need it like this, you can, because you have at least some audience there, even if that's not a big thrust of your actual marketing.
Right. But the point is that you don't want to force your customer, your stakeholders, to go look elsewhere for the evidence,
because they'll find the wrong information in the wrong place.
Right,
on Reddit.
Exactly.
Someone flaming you on Reddit.
Exactly. An interesting one, an issues register. Right? So
you're getting deep into the work process.
Yeah, absolutely. Scenario plan for each of the issues. When you're developing your protocol, what you're really doing is developing an issues list.
I think,
right?
Again, this is one of those questions where I say it depends. If you operate in a space that you know is controversial,
right?
Maybe it has something to do with medical or health or politics. Obviously, it's controversial.
Right.
Maybe you do business in other countries, or a product that has the potential to maybe hurt someone if used incorrectly or things of that nature. Obviously, if you're in weapons manufacturing or things like that, you already know you're on the cutting edge of people want to come at you with fake news.
Right.
So if that's the case, you should be very scenario driven to make sure that you can respond as well as possible.
So the last piece of advice from this Forbes article was to establish an internal review team. I don't know that you need a team,
right?
But somebody in the comm shop definitely needs to have the portfolio.
You need a responsible party.
To be continuing to look internally and reviewing. And it's not a full-time job; it's a portion of their job.
Right.
But somebody's got to be kind of
you just got to have a point in case
the
crap hits the fan. You need a person to be driving that process, and you need to know before it hits.
Before it hits, absolutely. So those are kind of my take on the Forbes suggestions for how to deal with fake news in business.
I think your take is spot on. I think we agree on most of these. I'm going to add one more bit of information for you guys. I'm going to look right in the camera and deliver this with all the might I can.
And all the sincerity, authenticity.
Not put your intern in charge of your social media. It's the dumbest thing you can do.
Yeah.
Would you put the intern in front of a TV camera?
Right.
No. Would you let your intern go and do the interview on radio?
No.
Live?
Or give the financial report.
Right. Would you let
quarter.
the intern go and pitch something to the president of the company?
Yeah.
No. But when you put the intern in charge of the social media, and we said a couple of times in this podcast, 5 seconds of bad social media can destroy 10 years of a brand reputation. Right. Why are you letting the least experienced and most underpaid, if paid at all, individuals in your organization be responsible for the potential to kill your brand with one bad post?
And we've seen so many.
Are you kidding?
So many examples of the social media intern doing something stupid.
Hundreds of examples of brands being damaged by social media interns.
Yep.
I can't give you an example of the intern coming up with something so creative and great on social media that you got a huge viral push and sales went through the roof because the intern did a great job one time, one day. Yeah. But they'll kill your brand if you let them. So
they
do not put them in front of TV cameras. Do not put them on a microphone on a live radio broadcast. And your social media is live. The second you hit send, it is live. Do not let the interns go live with your message.
Right.
Or you're slitting your own throat.
There you go.
It's ridiculous.
So we're hoping that if you follow these tips that maybe you can keep yourself out of hot water. Maybe you can defeat the disinformation. At the very least, you have a good chance of defending yourself successfully against all the trolls that are out there today.
And they will be coming for you.
And they'll be coming for you. So until next time, ciao.
Good luck.
Thanks for listening to the Golding Group Strategic Growth Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tell a friend, leave a review, and engage with us on social media. To contact us, please visit thegoldinggroup.com.